Perfect. Roberta, are we good?
Okay, we're broadcasting. Yep.
Excellent.
Please proceed.
Well, welcome back, everyone. It's our first Planning, Building, Environmental Committee of 2021. I hope everyone had a well-rested holiday there. Exiting 2020, here we are now in 2021. Hopefully we're on the up and up, and hopefully the year only gets better from here. And so I'm William, the chair tonight, Councillor William Riley. Due to efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chambers will not be open to the public to attend a standing committee council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments, matters that are on the agenda to jdyson@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the record. The meeting will be recorded and available on the township website within approximately 48 hours after the meeting. Moving forward, at this time, I'll ask if there's any pecuniary or conflict of interest. So far, seeing none. Make sure my whole screen sees everybody. Perfect. We're going to go down to the next section here. We're going to go into our public meeting portion. Right now, what we have before us is, just going through. The purpose of this public meeting is to consider an official plan amendment for the Township of West Lincoln Renewable Energy Policies, file number 170100005-19. The Planning Act requires under section 17, subsection 15, that before adopting an official plan amendment, that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of the public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln official plan. The Planning Act also requires under the Ontario Regulation 543-06 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make any oral submissions at the public meeting or make any written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaws pass, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the local planning appeals tribunal. At this time, I would ask the clerk, I'd ask that the clerk please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of mail and email public notices to agencies, as well as being advertised in local newspapers.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I'll start off with asking the Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, to please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed official plan amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gosh, I think that's the first time I've said Mr. Chair in a long time.
I think last time you called me Madam Chair, so it's definitely an improvement for me.
Okay, I am so sorry.
No worries.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a public meeting to proceed with the drafting of policies for the township's official plan that address renewable energy systems in the township. Councillors will likely recall that back in 2009, the Green Energy Act was approved by the previous provincial government, and that Green Energy Act took away all of the approval authority with respect to wind, solar, and biomass power generation facilities. The new provincial government that came into power in 2018 changed a lot of that policy such that it is now a requirement that the township participate in the approval process and have policies in place to help guide a township's position with respect to allowing for wind, solar, and biomass type facilities. Some of you might say, well, why don't we just say no to all types of facilities? And my answer to that is that we can't under provincial policy. Provincial policy encourages that we support green energy systems, encourages that we address climate change in a variety of different ways, and has a number of different policy sets that require us to explore how renewable energy systems can fit into the land use planning process for the township. So in some respects, Mr. Chair, we're still in fairly early stages of drafting a policy set. There's really no other models out there that are or have gone through any sort of an approval process yet. Since the repeal of the Green Energy Act by the province in 2018, municipalities haven't immediately processed new policy sets. So we're kind of leading edge in that regard. And I've taken a stab at a draft policy, which is attached to the staff report starting at page 12 and includes a number of different studies that are recommended along with an official plan amendment. So the way staff have proposed to structure the policies is that in the event that a number of studies are done that support allowing for renewable energy systems, then the applicants would have the right to make an official plan amendment and go through a hearings process, which at the end of the day, council can approve or deny based on compliance with policy and the appropriateness of fit within the township's planning regime. There's a number of different policies there. The studies identify that we should have supporting documentation with respect to a number of different provisions as identified on page 14 of the agenda. Things like agricultural impact, environmental impact, demonstration of need, the appropriateness of setbacks to sensitive receptors, addressing issues such as audible and inaudible noise, shadow flicker, ice throw, archaeological impacts, impact on the landscape. And through the open house process that we held, Mr. Chair, back on December 22nd, there were a couple of other policies that it became clear should be added to the draft amendment as well. As it's written right now, it still doesn't include policies with respect to ongoing monitoring of a facility should it get approved and up and running, and a policy set with respect to the decommissioning of developments at the end of their life expectancy is another one that's an obvious one that needs to get added into the draft amendment. The report does identify some of the key highlights of the open house. It was a very informative and beneficial open house. And so this tonight, Mr. Chair, is sort of our second opportunity to hear from the public. And then staff will go away and do some revisions to the policy based on the input received. Two other things that I'd like to note, if I may, Mr. Chair. At 4:43 this afternoon, comments were received from Linda Rogers by email. I have not had a chance to look at those, but it seems to be some 50 pages of material, which I'll make sure get to committee at the appropriate time as well. I did check, and Linda, I believe, is one of the attendees. So hopefully Linda will have a chance to at least speak to or highlight some of the attachments that she's submitted. The other thing, Mr. Chair, to mention is that the region provided some comments late in the day on Friday, and those will get attached to the minutes of the meeting. Generally, the region is supportive of the efforts of staff. I'm not going to read the whole report because it's quite lengthy, but let me just, if I may, I'll just highlight a couple of sections that I think are worth hearing. The subject official plan amendment proposes that if a renewable energy system is being installed for the benefit of one house or one property and generates less than 10 kilowatts, then no amendment to the official plan is required and only regulations of the zoning bylaw would apply. If a renewable energy system is being installed for the benefit of more than one house or property and generates greater than 10 kilowatts, then an official plan amendment would be required. The proposed amendment provides a list of criteria and studies that are needed to support the official plan amendment. Any proposals for renewable energy sources that would require a privately initiated official plan amendment, should these policies be adopted, requires the completion of pre-consultation meeting to identify the requirements for a complete application. According to the notice of public meeting, the current township zoning bylaw provisions will need to be updated to implement the proposed policy change. And then they go through a series of different policy sets, such as provincial policies of the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, a places to grow document. And they sort of start to conclude by saying the following comments are offered for consideration by staff in revising the official plan amendment policies. The township may wish to provide justification regarding the use of 10 kilowatts as the trigger for a local official plan amendment. The township may wish to create monitoring policies or a separate procedure regarding energy generation from renewable energy sources to maintain thresholds advised in the proposed policy set. Studies, including the environmental impact assessment and the archaeological study, should only be required as necessary or applicable given provincial or regional criteria. And applicable policies should be added to the township zoning bylaw to ensure consistency with the Electricity Act and provincial and regional policies. It is strongly recommended that the township provide a draft of the zoning bylaw amendment, provisions associated with the official plan amendment to, it doesn't say to whom, but I think to the region is what they're meaning. And then finally, the fifth point that they identify in the area for review is the township may consider requiring additional studies such as for such renewable energy systems, including and only as applicable a visual impact assessment, noise impact report, and a management plan. Conclusion, Regional Planning and Development Services staff is supportive of the township establishing provisions in their official plan to address renewable energy facilities. The region appreciates the opportunity to review the draft amendment and recommends that the township staff consider the above comments to inform the anticipated revisions to the draft official plan amendment prior to adoption and influence the future zoning provisions as applicable. Regional staff also welcome opportunities to discuss the amendment further as necessary. Given that renewable energy approvals lie with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the current proposed official plan amendment is exempt from Regional Council approval in accordance with policies of the Regional Official Plan and the Memorandum of Understanding with the township, and then identifies the contact people at the region to deal with. So, Mr. Chair, at this point, I think maybe I'll pull my presentation to an end to say that we're looking for comments tonight. This is not meant to be the final version of the official plan by any means. And people who participate and express an interest, I'll make sure they're involved in the opportunity to look at the revised policies before a recommendation report comes back before this committee.
Okay, thank you for that, Brian. So at this point, I'll go to the public submissions, and I will make note here. I've just noticed that I think we might have lost Councillor Ganan. I don't know if she's having some technical difficulties, but I would mention that for the record. Hopefully she can log back on. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask the gallery, or the virtual gallery that is, if there are any written or oral submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed official plan amendment. I'd like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this Zoom meeting would like to make comments and or provide written statements, they can do so now by just using one of two options. The first option is going to be using a computer or smartphone. You're going to select the raise your hand, which if you're on a computer, it's at the bottom there. I don't know offhand where it is on the smartphone. If you raise your hand, control that can be found and displayed on your screen, and staff will be able to prioritize you based on first come, first serve. If you've logged on here using a landline or telephone, all you have to do is dial *9, and that will notify staff that you are, have raised your hand through the phone method. Once you've been acknowledged, to speak, please unmute your microphone. It is important to provide your comments now. If you have not done so already, written or verbally, as LPAT may not consider comments made during any other council or committee meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak are required to unmute their microphones to talk. And at once they are finished, they should mute their microphone once again. So once you're done, we just ask you that you mute there so we don't accidentally hear what's going on in the background. Prior to speaking, please provide your name and address for the record. So at this point, I'll go to Roberta to see if there's any members of the virtual gallery that are ready that'd like to come forward and speak to this.
Albert Whitavine.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Whitavine, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, I guess to the committee, I'm wearing my my agriculture hat at this present time, and we would, the Niagara Federation of Agriculture would like to participate in this process and help Brian Treble in crafting something that would work on the land, because I understand, a lot of solar projects may happen in an urbanized setting, but there may be other green energy opportunities that would happen, make more sense to happen on agriculture land. So we would like to be part of this process and help Brian in creating a good, having, I guess, support from the agriculture community as we move forward. And I think that's what would be like to. So if we could, if Brian, if you could basically copy Kathy Mouse on some of this correspondence, then it can be brought to the board, and we could, we have a land use committee that we can have discussion on. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my only comments.
Thank you, Mr. Whittabee. Anybody else there?
Jordan Beekhouse.
Okay. Jordan, please proceed.
Hello, sorry, I didn't see the unmute button until I was called on, so I was a little concerned how this would work. My name is Jordan Beekhuis. I'm actually here on behalf of Vineland Power Incorporated, as a company that operates renewable energy projects in West Lincoln. We do have an interest in this process and are just would like to be involved to the extent possible. Having looked through what's been proposed so far, it looks like a familiar list of asks and studies that we typically would see in these sorts of developments. And so obviously the details are things we may want to address as this goes forward. And just like to express that if there's anything that we can contribute to help this process along, any information or other things that would, expertise that we can provide, we're more than willing to help, and hope this goes forward well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jordan. And Roberta, is there anybody else?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised, Counselor.
Okay. So unless that comes in, then the last, oh, I see Linda Rogers just popped up on my side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll let you unmute her or whatever. And Linda, once you're ready, you can speak.
Good evening. I apologize if you hear noise in the background. I do have children at home. I just wanted to, I did send my submission in on behalf of Mothers Against Wind Turbines later in the afternoon, and I apologize for that. But there is a lot of background information that I was trying to pick out pertinent studies and references for consideration. Obviously, our focus has been the impacts of the wind projects in West Lincoln and surrounding communities. One of the first take-home messages I wanted to give you guys is just to be careful of recreating the Green Energy Act. As one of the wind operators had said, there is a very familiar list of studies. Excuse me, I've got a laryngitis. It's a very familiar list of studies that are being asked. I think we need to cast our eyes back to the projects that are currently built, operating, and under construction, and ask the questions is, did that process work? Is it working? Has it prevented the reports of harm from residents who are living next to these projects? The next sort of take-home message I wanted to give is that compliance with regulation or regulatory capture is no guarantee that this type of land use will not be without problems. And in the submission that I know you haven't had a chance to look at, I brought up the example that West Lincoln is familiar with, and that was the siting of a PCB reclamation site that has left the community with a heritage pollution site that will have to be managed for a long time. So as we look at renewable energy in whatever form it's going to take, to not bind ourselves to doing what was done in the past if it has not been effective. And I guess my message is it has not. I think all of us know the stories of residents who are no longer living in West Lincoln because of the turbines that have been built.
Is that everything, Linda? Sorry.
I'll leave it at that because I think, you know, it's a subject for some of the councillors who know the history going back many years. There's a lot of information. It's the hard aspect to really look at that and to take a look at some of the newer references that we cited. There's always new stuff coming out. In the submission, I did attach an ordinance that was recently passed in the United States, which I understand is not in our jurisdiction. But one of the advantages to that one is it was guided by acousticians who are the ones that have to come and take the measurements when, for example, noise doesn't work. So it's just something, there was a lot of work put into that one. So it's already one that maybe can be looked at very carefully, and it would address the generic studies that are being asked for.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing those comments. So at this point, I'll ask one more time if there's anybody else in the gallery here that would like to speak. Just as a reminder, this may be the only public meeting and the only chance you'll have to speak to this, as LPAT may not consider any future comments from any future discussions. So last chance.
Sydney Thompson.
Hello there.
Hi, Sydney.
Yes, this is Sydney Thompson. I'm at Alma Drive in Smithville, and I'm a member of the West Lincoln Glanbrook Wind Action Group. To Brian, I haven't completely read your amendments, but because I only received them this afternoon, but it does strike me that we haven't included anything in there with regard to transmission lines. Whilst we don't see that they hurt anybody's health, they certainly do change the environment substantially in our township. And if there are other considerations for transmission lines, I think that we should put something in there that they should be underground, even though the installers told me way back that it was 10 times the cost to put them underground. At that point, they didn't know that they were going to have to put crash barriers around them either. So that was an expense that they didn't expect. But I think everyone would agree that the transmission lines have made a significant environmental impact to our township. So if we could include that, that would be great. I don't think that's in there at the moment, is it, Brian? Yeah. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to respond to that. You just said, yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a question there at the end, if that was already going to be in there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the policies are written in such a fashion that anything related to the development, I would argue, would have to be reviewed with respect to the various policy sets. But it's food for thought. So I'll make sure that in the revision I bring back to council and send out for input that I specifically consider things like transmission lines. So thank you for putting it on the table, Mr.
Thank you, Brian.
I appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
this ordinance, Mr. Chair, this ordinance that Linda made reference to, I'm quite interested in that as well. I'll be digging that out as soon as I can.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So at this point, I'm going to move on to committee. Do any members of committee have any oral or written submissions on the proposed official plan amendment? Please note that members of committee must make their comments now, as LPAT may not consider, oops, I lost my line here, may not consider comments made by any other council or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak are required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they are finished, they are asked to mute their microphone again. Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee meeting or a council meeting. Please be advised that once a committee council has made a decision with respect to the official plan amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of that passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Joanne Shime, at jshime@westlincoln.ca. So at this point, I'll go to committee and see if anybody would like to speak. I see the mayor. So Mayor Bylsma, you're first.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments made by the public and the various studies. There's just basically two two components that I found lacking. One was an overall capacity of a municipality. I think there could be room for expressing some kind of limit to what a particular community can hold in terms of renewable energy. So what that is, I think, is a subject, but there is a sense of that I think a community, if there's no capacity and the people can keep putting in layer upon layer upon layer, I think that would be a concern to the residents. The other thing is two components with respect to siting. And I'm sure they're in the studies, but one of the downfalls of the Green Energy Act was, regardless of the size of the particular wind turbine or installment for solar, the siting was always the same, and that was, and so I'm looking for a component of proportionality, and I think that's addressed in one of them, but I just want to get it in the record because that was one of the most egregious challenges with the size of our particular wind units and clustering. So one of the challenges, again, were particular hosts who had the capacity to have 2 or 3 or 4 wind turbines. I think there's a section out by Low Banks, there's 7 or something in a very, very small area. And of course it creates sometimes resonance. It's something more for acousticians to figure out, but the concept of clusters, I think still needs to be dealt with in the siting so that we don't end up with 7 going only the 500 meters from neighbors and such. So those are the two components under siting that I think need to be addressed. So that's all my comments for at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go to Councillor Ganan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to tell the people who are on this call who did attend Brian's open house how valuable I thought that their information was that they brought forward. I thought that you all made excellent contributions towards this study. One of the things that speaks a little bit to what Mayor Bilsma was pointing out, at least where I thought he might be going, was when he was talking about capacity. And I've also had this conversation with Mr. Treble about all of the points that they're looking for various studies and surveys and information pieces to be done. The fact that the first and foremost, I think, should be is really a demonstration for the need in a particular location. So although I've had that conversation with Mr. Treble, and I know he is also sort of on top of that, I think we have to keep in mind before we ever start this process with anyone that the demonstration for a need in that particular area should be first and foremost before anything else gets going. So I just want to make sure that is on the record. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And just looking around, I don't see anybody else. Oh, I see Councillor Jonker. Please proceed.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Brian, Mr. Trumbull. We are a member of the multiple municipal wind turbine working group. And I guess I just wanted to ask you, have you reached out to them to see what they have for when it comes to a proposal and what some of the members there have put forward? I know it's been a while since we've had a meeting. It's been a quiet committee because of COVID, but I'm just wondering, have you reached out to the I can't even think of the chair there right now, but to see if they have anybody like any of their members that have put a proposal together and a new draft. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I have not as of yet. I was waiting to get through tonight before I reached out to that group. But the one person that I thought I would reach out to, and perhaps someone on the call can confirm if I'm still right on this, Mr. Warren Howard, I believe, is a key contact that has connections to that group as well as to Wind Concerns Ontario. So I had intended to reach out to him and then thought his guidance might help me in terms of who else to touch base with as well, beyond the group that we have here who have been very helpful. So that was my thinking through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I guess that's it for Councilor Jonker. I'm just looking to, I don't see a Warren Howard in here, so I don't know if you'd want to speak, but okay, anyways, at this point, I don't see anybody else. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed official plan amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:01 p.m.
There's, she muted.
Perfect. All right, so,
My basement, I've got a wonderful echo from you.
oh, you can hear me twice?
Yep,
Lucky you.
double the pleasure, double the fun.
Yeah, I like to keep it lively. So we're going to move forward to the next public meeting. So sorry, just opening up my window here. Where are we? Okay. So this public meeting, so moving to 3.2, this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment to a draft plan of subdivision application submitted by Mars Home Smithville West Incorporated, an IBI group agent for the property legally described as Lot B, Plan M98. As stated, the Planning Act requires in Section 5120 that before approving or amending a draft plan of subdivision, in Section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed amendments to the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Landing zoning bylaw, a draft of subdivision application. Oh, that's a mouthful. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendments, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. Under the Planning Act, the Planning Act also requires through Section 34, subsection 13, and under the Ontario regulation of 543/06, that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions or written submissions at the public meeting, sorry, I got ahead of myself, make any oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person of the public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Township of West Lincoln at the local planning tribunal. The public notice. So at this point, I'll ask the clerk to notify or please advise the method and dates by which notice was given to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of mail to neighboring properties within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as posted notice on the subject property and advertised on the township's website.
Excellent. Thank you, clerk. So at this point, I'll ask planner Garrett Burma, please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed planning zone bylaw amendment and draft plan subdivision application.
Thank you. Good evening, committee and members of the public. A draft plan of subdivision application and zoning bylaw amendment have been submitted by IBI Group, the agent on behalf of Mars Home Smithville West, and the name of this proposed development is called Thrive. The subject property is a 25.6 acre property and is located in the west corner of Regional Road 20 and South Grimsby Road 5. Let me just share my screen for a second. These lands were added to the urban boundary in 2015 as part of a SWAT process and are currently within the Northwest Quadrant Secondary Plan. The Northwest Quadrant Secondary Plan has provided a land use concept for this land, which includes a network of public streets, low, medium, and high density residential, commercial, parkland, and a stormwater management facility. The property is currently vacant with the exception of a mobile sales trailer being stored and is currently zoned Development D in the township's zone bylaw. The applicants have provided a draft plan shown before you here and a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment, which proposes approximately 224 residential units. This would take the form of singles, townhouses, and mixed use units. In addition, there is a proposed commercial space, parkland, and a stormwater management facility. A virtual open house was held on December 2nd, where a few of the neighboring property owners attended and participated. The township also sent notice out as per Jessica, the clerk's, what she had mentioned, and the township has received comments from the Niagara Region, Public Works Department, Enbridge Gas, NPEI, Canada Post, and the Catholic School Board. And we're still waiting on a few comments from the fire department. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has indicated in their comments that additional studies are required. The township, NPCA, and applicant will be having a meeting in the coming days and weeks to discuss the extent of these additional requirements. In addition to agency comments, one written submission was made by Ubrex, developers associated with the Streamside subdivision development. This submission, as well as the township response letter, can be found as attached in PD 00121 on tonight's planning agenda. Staff have done a preliminary review of the applications and have noted there is some need for some additional information to support the application. That information that township staff are looking for can also be found in staff report PD 00121. As with other developments in the Northwest Quadrant, township staff will be sending out this application for a peer review following the public meeting and prior to a recommendation report being prepared and presented. And my final point is I'd just like to note that Jared Marcus, the agent for Mars Homes from IBI Group, is in attendance and has a short presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. So I guess at this point, we'll go to the representative. If you could so kindly come forward. Perfect. Hey, Jared, can you unmute? Perfect.
Yep.
Floor is
Can you hear me?
yours. Yes, we can.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Mr. Treble said, I was also prepared to say Madam Chair, but good thing he went first. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. I haven't seen you since 2020, and we thought things would change, but here we are. So my name is Jared Marcus. I'm from IBI Group, and as Mr. Boruma mentioned, I'm representing my client, Mars Homes Smithville West, Inc. I do have a presentation with me, so once I find the button, I will share that.
So Roberta, do we give him access to share yet?
Yes, he can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see the bright green screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Jared Marcus. I'm here on behalf of my client, Mars Homes Smithville, Inc., and we're here for the draft plan of subdivision and zoning amendments for our development known as Thrive. As Mr. Boruma mentioned, our subject lands are located in the northwest area of Smithville. You'll see the subject lands outlined here in red on this first slide. And for your reference, the outline of the Northwest Quadrant secondary plan is in blue to show you the context within that. So as you're likely familiar with, Highway 20 runs along the southerly portion of our project. South Grimsby Road 5 makes up the east boundary, and the CP rail line makes up the northerly boundary. The subject lands are generally vacant, agricultural field. There was some small shrub in the southeast and the northwest. Those lands were somewhat cleaned up prior to my client's involvement in the project. But more recently, the lands at the intersection of Grimsby Road 5 and Highway 20, they've put some stockpilings from their Smithville Station project there, and the sales center, as Mr. Boruma mentioned. The predominant land uses surrounding the project to the north and to the west are additional agricultural lands. To the east, we have an existing low-density neighborhood. And to the south, you have the Catholic school and a mix of lower density and medium density uses. Next slide shows the context within the Northwest Quadrant secondary plan. Again, you can see the project boundaries in red here. Within the secondary plan, you do have two main east-west roads running from the future connections with Northridge Drive and Westleigh Drive intersections at South Grimsby Road 5. And you have one main north-south road connection with Highway 20 that would connect to one of those east-west roads. The predominant land uses within my client's lands are low density and medium density residential designations, although there is a small high density designation at the front on Highway 20 and a small area of commercial designation at the intersection of South Grimsby Road 5 and Highway 20. As you mentioned, there's also a stormwater management pond more central to my client's lands and a linear park running along the CP boundary. Generally speaking, the low and medium density designations permit single semis townhouses and some low rise apartments. Maximum densities for the low density residential is 30 units per hectare, and maximum densities for medium density is 45 units per hectare. Noted here is that the high density designation would have a minimum residential density of 40 units per hectare. The next slide shows the existing zoning, development D, which only permits existing uses and some public uses. So we would require a zoning bylaw amendment for any type of development on these lands. As you may be aware, there's a fairly lengthy history to this subject lands. They were part of the original swap, but more recently, a pre-consultation was held in 2019 for my client's lands, where we discussed a similar layout to this development, and it was identified that draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications would be required. And those applications were formally submitted to Township in July of 2020. Unfortunately, one of the applications took a long time to get completed, so that natural environment report didn't make it into staff's hands until October, so that complete application and initial circulation for review didn't happen until November. And that municipal and agency review is ongoing. As Mr. Borima mentioned, an open house meeting was held December 2nd, and we are now at the statutory public meeting. So further review and future council recommendation report are forthcoming at an unknown date. As I mentioned, the pre-consultation meeting was held for the draft plan and zoning application, and it identified some reports, studies, planning justification reports, noise report, engineering design, archaeological, geotechnical, environmental, urban design, and traffic impact study. And all those things have been submitted now and are under review. So the next slide shows you a colored version of the black and white plan that Mr. Borima had on the screen for you. As you can see, we have matched we have an east-west road connection running through the development that would connect ultimately through Westleigh Drive. You have a main road connection from Highway 20, which would connect to that, and then a secondary road connection from Northridge Drive that would create a four-way stop in the development. The main thing I would point out here is that the only difference in road pattern from the secondary plan is that this Northridge Drive extension extends a little further westerly within the secondary plan, but that'll be more clear on a further slide. So land uses we're proposing running through the center of the development on the main road. We have low density single detached lots. In the northwest corner, we have a large townhouse condo block, which has a mix of bungalow and 2- and 3-story townhouses. Running along the north limits, you have a linear park trail block that would be dedicated to the municipality. These lands here, unfortunately, are not owned by my clients, so they're just out of the development at this point, which is why we have cul-de-sacs proposed so that the road network can continue through at a future date. As you move to the southeast, you have the mixed-use block, which is shown in purple. Adjacent to that, you have another medium density townhouse block, and that's a mix of back-to-back townhouses and typical street townhouses. And then as you get to the southwesterly corner of our site, we have a stormwater management pond, and my lights just went out. That's good stuff. I apologize if you could give me a moment to turn my lights back on.
That is fine. Yes, we can
Go.
hear you. We just can't see you.
All right, I'm sure everyone wants to see me anyways. So at the southwest corner of the project, we have a stormwater management pond, which is the natural low point of the project or of the development site. And this differs slightly from the secondary plan only because that is the natural low point. And then there are some singles and towns that ring around that. And so that's the land use of the development. This is just a breakdown of the various lots and blocks within the development. So you have 45 single detached dwellings, a total of 147 townhouse dwellings, and 32 apartment dwellings within a mixed use building. So you have a total of 224 residential units. And that doesn't count the future development lands that would be around those cul-de-sacs. There's approximately 1,300 square meters of commercial area in that mixed use block. There are 11 future development blocks for lots and single detached lots and townhouses, one swim block, one public trail, and 2 municipal roads. So all totaling approximately 10.3 hectares of land. The development in total has a gross density of approximately 22 units per hectare. And once you subtract park, open space, and roads, you have a net density in the development of approximately 35 units per hectare. The next slide shows for you the simplified version of the zoning. If you've read the planning report or seen the bylaw, it gets a little messy, so I've tried to simplify things. Through the center in this red hatch, you have the single detached dwellings. That would be the R3 modified zone. In the northwest area here, in the more southeasterly area, you have RM3 zones. That's actually broken down into 3 site-specific RM3 zones. You have the service commercial C3 zone in the southeast corner, and then a standard open space zone for the trail system and the swim block. The next slide up shows another colorized version. This is based on our current site design layout. This isn't just schematic marketing stuff. This is actually based on the unit designs that we're proposing. So we're pretty confident in the zoning and the layout of these blocks. So again, the yellow is just single detached lots, just your typical design. You'll see some hatching around the cul-de-sacs. Those are the future development lands that we won't be unlocking until future road connections are made. And then you have the mixed use block in the corner. The next few slides are just going to show the various zoning categories and areas that we've identified. This first one you'll see in the red layout, that's for the single detached lots. That's the R3 modified. And the modifications are small change. Whoops, let me go back one. Small changes to the lot area and to reduce the corner lot frontage. The next slide is a modified RM3, and this applies to the 2- and 3-story townhouses. That would be the few blocks of street townhouses down in the southeast corner, and this large condo townhouse block in the northwest corner. And so we're seeking modifications to the RM3 zone for reduced lot area, reduced lot frontage from 6 meters to 5.1, and that's for the 3-story townhouses. Reduced side yard, very minor reduction to the rear yards from 7.5 to 7 meters, and a reduction in amenity area to reflect that change. The next outline are the bungalow townhouses. So those would generally be 1-story or 1-story with loft type of townhouses. They're wider units and do require a couple minor modifications to the lot area and to the rear yard. And again, it's you can see it's 6.9 versus 7.5. So it's a really small change to the lot area. Next slide shows the back-to-back townhouse units, and these are a unit that doesn't exist, or a built form topology that doesn't exist in Smithville yet. It's common in Beamsville, it's common in West Lincoln and Stony Creek, not West Lincoln, Grimsby, excuse me. But it's not been built in Smithville yet, so it's a new type of use. And so this requires a number of larger modifications to the existing zoning, only because it's not a topology that exists. So back-to-backs are essentially 3-story townhouses without a rear yard. That's the main difference between them. So you have modification to the RM3 zone to permit the type of use, modifications to reduce landscape area due to lack of rear yard, reduced lot area, reduced rear yard, and increased amenity and reduced amenity and increased lot coverage. And all of that is a product of the lack of the fact that these don't have a rear yard like a typical street townhouse or condo townhouse would have. And the last one is, second last one is the service commercial zone. And this is for the mixed use building. We're proposing a 3-story building with approximately 1,300 square meters of commercial area and 32 residential units. And this would require an amendment to that zone to permit apartment units above commercial, reduce the front yard to push the building closer to Highway 20 to create a better street edge, and reduce parking ratios to reflect the complementary types of uses: commercial parking during the day, and when the commercial units are shut down, residential parking at night. So it's a type of complementary parking. And lastly, the open space zones, which don't require any mods and would just apply to the parkland, park and trail at the north end, and the stormwater management pond more central to the development. The next few slides just show you some examples of the types of units we're proposing that my client has built in other municipalities. The first ones are just these typical 2-story townhouse units, but they've been oriented to the noise source being the CP rail line along the north. So the attached garages would be facing the noise source, and they would protect the amenities, the rear yard amenities, which would be central to the development. And this was built in Grimsby on Winston Road and faces the QEW noise source, so a very similar scenario to what we're proposing. The next is just typical single detached dwelling that my client has built in the Smithville Station development just downtown from here. Similarly, 2-story townhouses that they've built down the road in downtown Smithville. We would also be proposing a 3-story townhouse in this development, so a slightly narrower unit with another story on top, but similar architectural styles. This is an older model of a back-to-back townhouse that my client has built in Stony Creek. Unfortunately, we didn't have any current unit designs that we could show you, but as you can see, the main difference is that the common party wall runs between these 4 central windows. So it's just two townhouses squished together. And again, they'd be 3 stories. They'd all have private garages, private driveways. There just wouldn't be that typical rear yard amenity area. As Mr. Borama mentioned, there was an open house meeting in December, only a handful of attendees, and similarly, only a handful of questions. So there were questions about average price, phasing, the swim pond, and access. So as far as average price goes, you've probably seen my client's sign on the lands, which indicates starting in the 400s. There's really no way to know what the price is going to be. It's quite early in the process, so that'll be ironed out later. Similarly, phasing of development, it's not a known thing yet. It's hard to really put that, make that decision this early, but it's likely to start from Highway 20 with the main road and the singles, and then move to the townhouses in the northwest corner, and then move to the front corner with the mixed use and the back-to-backs. As far as the design of the swim pond, it's just your standard swim pond. All the drainage would be collected into municipal sewers and ultimately drain into the pond where it's treated and then exits into eventually into 20 Mile Creek. In regards to the future lotting and future road layout, this was similar to concerns staff had. This is based on the draft plan lotting. You'll see the main road from Highway 20 runs north-south here, and then the main east-west road throughout the development. Those both are proposed to connect to Wesley Drive and Northridge Drive at the Grimsby Road 5 intersections. And you'll see in red here that we've proposed a schematic. Bloody hell again. Okay, here we go. And then we've proposed in red a schematic lotting pattern to show that we've given this some consideration. We're confident that with future assembly of these lands on South Grimsby Road 5, that these ultimate connections can be created and realistic lotting patterns can happen. So we're confident that with the areas that we've identified for future development, that those future road connections would be accommodated. Lastly, at the open house, there were questions about secondary access. As you know, there's one main access from the development to Highway 20, and the other access points are contingent on assembly of other development lands. So within our development, we've proposed temporary access through one of the future development lots through the back-to-back townhouse block. And similarly, you can connect through the mixed-use project to South Grimsby Road 5, and both of those potential connections could be established through easements or restrictive covenants on future condominium lands. Two alternate options we've discussed internally but haven't put any hard details to is potential expansion of the connection to Highway 20, similar to what you see at the Smithville Station development, where that access road connects with St. Catherine Street, or further north where the public trail connects with the road, potential access point there. So these are things we'll continue to dialogue with township staff about. Other comments you've probably seen in the staff report, again, were street connections and adjacent lotting fabric, which we've talked about. There have been some discussions about feasibility for the multi-use trail, given that right now it just kind of looks like lines on a plan. We have discussed this with our engineering consultant, and they've done some preliminary grading work, and they're confident that we can accommodate berms and a berm and a trail within that space. But those fine details will be worked out through staff or with staff as we move along. And the main consideration is compatibility with the secondary plan, of course. And so the one clause I want to bring to your attention is within the secondary plan policies, and it's this clause 2, where it talks about maintaining the intent of the plan as it relates to size of designations, locations, and street layout. And the next slide shows you what we think demonstrates that consistency. This is the secondary plan. You can see our project boundaries outlined in red here, and our project's proposed road network outlined in blue. So you have the proposed road street G on the secondary plan, which would connect to Wesley Drive in the east, and that exactly mirrors our proposed road network. You have the road connection, Street H in a north-south manner to Town Line Road, and that lines up exactly with our proposed road. The only difference to the road network really is the extension of Northley Drive and whether that road is required to continue in a westerly direction and terminate, or should terminate as we've proposed it at this 4-way intersection. And in our opinion, the road connections, as we've shown, do serve that intent of the plan. Also shown on this sketch is a green outline, and that's really outlining some of the changes in land use. In the green is what we are proposing as low density residential. And of course, you can see the low density residential in the yellow color on the secondary plan. The main difference being where we show it continuing on Street G, the secondary plan showed it continuing on Street F. And likewise, we've changed, the plan showed medium density, where we now show it along within that condo block. So really it was a one-to-one switch from frontage on the road to an internal, more internal layout. The other glaring change being the lack of an identified high density block, which was central here at the intersection of Street H and Town Line Road. We've moved the overall unit density you would have seen there into the mixed use block. So it may not be a like for like in size of designated area, but it's a similar unit switch. And overall, I do have the actual numbers. Those are shown on the next slide. This is a comparison of what the types of land uses and the areas assigned through the secondary plan. And then on the right-hand side, the types of uses and the areas that we've assigned through our draft plan of subdivision. And everything here essentially lines up perfectly with the exception of that high density block. All of the land uses are equivalent medium density, low density, commercial, street network, swim pond, parkland, everything lines up perfectly with the exception of that high density block. And so we've proposed those high density uses within the commercial mixed use, and it is a very similar unit count. And so we're confident with the road network as it's laid out on our plan, and with the types of uses and the breakdowns, that we have a similar project that we feel is consistent and conforms with that secondary plan. And so that's the last slide I have for you tonight. That's my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions this committee or the public may have at this time.
Thank you, Jared. That was an excellent presentation. So I guess at this time, I'm just going to review my notes here again. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask the gallery if there's any oral or written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed zoning bylaw and or draft plan subdivision. I'd like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this Zoom meeting would like to provide a comment or provide a written comment, they should do so now by using one of two options. If you're using a computer or smartphone, you're going to select the raise your hand control that can be found within the Zoom options displayed on your screen. Or two, using a landline or telephone, you're going to dial the number star or the star sign and the number 9. This will notify staff that you've raised your hand and that you'd like to speak to it. Once you have been addressed or acknowledged, you can unmute your mic, and that we do ask that afterwards that you remute your mic so that we don't hear anything in the background. Yeah, so at this point, I'll go to the gallery, see if there's anybody else or anyone that'd like to speak to this. And yeah, hopefully we have some communication.
Not seeing any so far, Mr. Chair.
It's Kathy Mouse calling, and I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to with the screen sharing.
Oh, sorry, I'm
hand raising.
Oh.
Just a couple of questions. With this development, you're putting an awful strain.
Okay, go ahead, Kathy. Sorry, there's still a bit of feedback.
You're putting an awful strain on 20 Highway, which is already very, very busy. More houses doesn't necessarily mean more income for town. With it being on the outskirts of town, I don't see any of these people trying to get through town, which is very difficult to get to the other side of town to do any grocery shopping. I realize that turning agricultural land into houses seems like a good idea, but I do worry about what this more congestion on 20 Highway is going to do to the town and the infrastructure, which you guys are struggling with as far as keeping roads in good shape. The trucks that will be coming in and out of here, are they going to be going along Highway 20 and using your new roundabout? Where does the dirt go from the basements from all of this construction? A lot of these questions are of concern because agriculture is prime, and I realize that this land has been dedicated to residential. Unfortunately, I'm just struggling with how you're going to handle all of the growth that you have seen in Smithville with the infrastructure that you currently have in place.
Okay, your comment's been received. Thank you very much. Anybody else in the gallery would like to provide a comment or a written oral statement? Okay, not seeing any. So I'll move forward to members of the committee. Are there any members of the committee that have any oral or written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and official plan? Please note sorry, make sure I didn't lose that. Please note that members of the committee must make their comments now, as LPAT may not consider comments made at any other council and or committee meeting. Any members of council wishing to speak are required to unmute their microphones to talk, and once they are finished, they are to mute their microphones again. Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and or council meeting. Please be advised that once committee and or council have made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of their passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you've emailed the township clerk, Joanne Shime, at jshime@westlincoln.ca. And at this point, I'll go to committee. Are there any members of committee that would like to speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Counselor.
All right, Councilor Rayner, you've been acknowledged. You have the floor.
Thank you. The previous speaker, I'm confused with what she said, because she said converting agriculture to housing seems like a good idea. And I just picked myself off the floor. And then she said later that this is predominantly agriculture and we should look after it. So I'm confused. They're both polar opposites. But I think she meant the second one, that the agricultural land is important to us and we should look after it. Unfortunately, this was a trade swap deal. It wasn't the best swap deal in the world, but 4 pieces of land were swapped for this in order to make this slaughter happen. But the thing that really bothers me a lot is they're even talking in this about putting condominiums up that don't even have a backyard. Could the gentleman please explain how you're supposed to utilize your property when, if you have a little dog or you want a little garden, you don't have anything? You're just talking about a building and no yard, or was there a side yard? Could you please explain that?
Yes, and I think just as far as the illustration goes here, Councilor Rayner, there looks like there is a little front yard, but I'll go back to Jared. Jared, would you like to address that question there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. I'll move back a few slides to something that zoomed in. So this, whoop, too far. There we go. So this is the block of townhouses that I believe the question references. I'll only clarify that I'm guilty of just throwing the word condominium around. It refers to ownership, not building type. But these are townhouse units, whether they're freehold or condominium ownership. You're correct. They do not have a rear yard. The middle line running through these units would be the rear of the building. So they do not have a rear yard. They do have a front yard, and the same as any other townhouse unit, the end units would have side yards. There would be some common elements, some common landscaped areas on site. And there would be, of course, the municipal parkland to the north.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So may I continue, Mr. Chair?
You may, sir.
Thank you. So it doesn't make sense to me to do that. And the other thing is, there was already I don't want to use a game because that's not really fair, but there was a manipulation of properties in order to make this thing work, substituting other properties, which is a weird situation, but they wanted to get this land so badly they were willing to do almost anything. I would say at this point, since they are going to destroy this beautiful piece of agricultural land, that there should be no variances. The township has specific setbacks, specific guidelines as to what they should be. And I know the gentleman mentioned, well, one is 7.5 and we're only going to 7. Everything is going down, down, down. I'm saying that if this is going to be rammed through, which obviously it's going to be, that it should be following the guidelines with no exceptions. You got your piece of land, you're going to make your multi-millions on it. You're going to destroy the land and you're going to increase the traffic flow, which this lady said is correct because Highway 20 right now is busy. So there's a whole bunch of negative spin-offs from this other than we're putting a lot of money in developers' pockets. Follow the rules, follow the township guidelines from the planning department, and we'll have to eat it up. But we're not going to give the land up and also do all these other little pleasant things in order to increase the profitability of the developer. I mean, there is a point where we've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. Be grateful you got it, follow the rules, and there'll be probably nothing to stop you. but asking for exceptions after already getting this piece of land on a really crazy deal seems you've already stretched the limit beyond what I've experienced in anything else in my almost 15 years of sitting on council. So that's my point, Mr. Chair. I'd like that put in the record.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rayner. I'm going to ask any other members of council would like to speak to this at this time. Sorry, the screen flipped over. So I see Mayor Bylsma and Councillor Gannon, you'll be next.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is a little bit more directed to the Director of Planning. So Garrett or Brian can answer, but part of the whole secondary plan was a road network that moved in and through the CPR lands. And I don't know that that's ever been resolved, whether we are doing another rail crossing or we're doing a grade separation, and I'm a little curious to know, like, is we're going through plan of condominiums or plan of development, and is that cart before the horse, or have we resolved that first problem or the first challenge, which is a grade separation or some kind of road, another rail crossing? How's that process going? Because it's not really apropos at this moment, because everything on this particular development is going to exit onto Highway 20 in the short term. Eventually, two of the accesses are going to go on to Grimsby Road 5, and one consequently out to whatever you want to call it, 6, or the continuation of Spring Creek. I don't know what that name's going to be.
Yes. So who was that? Sorry, was that question to?
Either to Garrett, because he floated this, or Brian. Have we resolved that issue in the kind of the whole secondary plan process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can start, and Garrett can fill in any blanks I may have missed. Jared, are you able to go back to one of the earlier slides in your presentation that showed the property in relation to the whole of the secondary plan, or at least the whole of the area south of the railway?
I think it was the almost like the first or second
Or
slide.
towards the start, yeah. Mr. Mayor, while we're going back there, the above grade railway crossing is still contemplated to be at the roundabout end. So this property that we're dealing with tonight, at the very point, is almost there to where the potential above grade crossing would be. So it's not really affected by this development, because we don't actually get to the extension with this property. The next property, which I believe is owned by people with the surname of DiCarlo, is who needs to be at the table to be also part of those discussions for the opening up of that road. All of that planning is in the development charge background study. It's all there for future to happen. We don't necessarily have it engineered, but it's on the plans.
It's just that I know we're creeping to the corners. That corner kind of touched, and I thought if there's a grade separation or something there, like those are kind of the first houses that are touching on it, and or that park, whether there was going to be something that was happening there, an adjustment there that allowed a grade crossing at the Grimsby Road 6. So what, in effect, we haven't sorted that out yet, is what?
Not completely, but through you, Mr. Chair, certainly the secondary plan includes a green space area there to give us some room for an above grade elevation change. So we'll have, Mr. Mayor, it's appropriate to make sure that we include area for that possibility in the plan that we're dealing with here, for sure. So good catch.
I don't want to commit to something that handcuffs us later on, and we're going to go back and we have to do something really creative to get the crossings at either end. Whether one is great, like we proposed all kinds of stuff, closing the road, a grade separation. CPR is very particular about adding new crossings. They don't. So it's a 1-for-1. And so I know that discussion was ongoing. I didn't know if there was any resolution. It doesn't sound like we have a resolution yet. But I just don't want us to commit to something that we're going to regret later on. That's all. That's my question. For this purpose of this public meeting, then I've got that on the record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe I have Councillor Gann next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. One, Mr. Mayor, when there was some discussion early in the stages of the secondary planning, there was a great deal of negative feedback from members of the public with the thought of closing South Grimsby Road.
You're right.
So I just want to clarify that we're not reopening that can of worms at this point in time. But that wasn't my question. My question is to you, Jared, please, Mr. Marcus. And it really is about intent. The last time an apartment was mentioned in this municipality, it started off as a proposal that was coming to build apartments, meaning rental apartments. And then it became, partway through the process, it was called condominium apartments. And then it became suddenly just condominiums. That proposal died and we haven't had to deal with it. But now I see the word apartment again. And I'm just wondering if you know on behalf of your client, whether the intention is to provide in that commercial block, in the mixed use block, apartment rentals that people really do need in West Lincoln, or whether we're really looking at condominium apartments. Any idea about that, sir?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Chair. We haven't had that discussion yet. Yeah, I think it's a little early. I mean, I do hear the concern that there is a lack of rental housing availability in the township. So that may be a desire. At this point, we haven't had those discussions. It's quite preliminary as far as what that final land use is going to look like, but I'll definitely, I know my client is on the line here listening.
I saw that too.
And
that was my reason for asking the question. I would just like that, please, to be, I know it's early in the process, obviously, but I do want that to be sort of in the background of everybody's mind. If there's a way to make that work, that would benefit our community. Just living on top of a commercial building is not as beneficial in terms of looking at this overall plan. So anyway, thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. At this point, I'll ask if there's any other members of committee like to say anything. Harold, welcome back. I saw you fell out there for a moment. Okay, at this point, I'll make. I guess,
technical difficulties.
No, I figured as much.
Sorry.
No worries. And so I just wanted to mention a quick brief comment or two. For the most part, Councillor Gann kind of hit the nail on the head there. One of the topics I was going to bring up was clarification on understanding whether or not it was going to be condos or apartments, and the stressing the importance of what our community actually needs more of. I understand there's obviously going to be concerns of what that looks like in congestion, and as we we're seeing slow but small improvements in infrastructure. It's certainly not where we need it to be quite yet. But I as far as looking at this current plan in some capacity, I would like to put this on the record that I think we need to start looking at incorporating traffic calming measures within, especially Street G there, or whatever that's going to be, whether that's, I'm not necessarily, not just talking about speed bumps, but if there's could be some extra streetscaping that just reduces the speed, because I can see that being a bit of a drag strip, especially if it gets to the point where it opens up, whether it goes from Street G or Street H, whatever those are. I certainly would like that. I think it help with the beautification of the street, so they don't just become open speedways. Again, it's all about public safety, so I know that's important to me to see that future communities developed, or future subdivisions like that developed with that in mind. But for the most part, it obviously offers a variety of housing types, and that's what our community needs is mixture. I am kind of, as much as Councillor Rayner brought up, the back-to-back is definitely a very different style of house. I'm certainly going to go drive by Lincoln and Grimsby and kind of see it for myself and digest that a little bit more. It does, to me, I feel like as a homeowner myself, I want to have a little piece of land that I can, let my kids play, or, if you have animals, let them run. But if there's a demand for that market, and maybe people, as they get, to, want a simpler life, they don't want to deal with cutting the grass. So maybe there's a need for that. So anyways, that's all I'm going to say for now. At this point, with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application, I conclude it at the hour of 7:51. Thank you very much, Jerry. Appreciate the presentation and the answering the questions so far.
Thank you for your time.
All right, sorry, just got to bring up my agenda. Okay, so I'm going to move on forward. I'm going to ask committee if there's any change in order of items on the agenda. Seeing none, I'm going to move forward to appointments. We have Director of the Niagara Federation of Agriculture, Rob Cosby, here to present a presentation from Farm 911, the Emily Project. So Rob, if you could please unmute your mic, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes, you're a little broken up, but we can hear you. Oh.
I'm going to move the phone if you like.
You're pretty static there.
I'll just shut this off and I'll.
So he's going to call in, I believe. So we'll give him a moment there. Where did my... So Roberta, I see a phone number in the gallery. Is that Rob by chance?
Just one moment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rob, you there?
How's that work?
A lot better, thank you.
Okay, we'll do this over the phone then. So good evening, Chairperson Riley, Planning Committee and Township staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Farm 911 Emily project to you this evening. My name is Rob Cosby. I'm a member of the Farm Safety Committee of the Niagara Federation of Agriculture. I'm joined by Kathy Mouse, the Federation of Agriculture Administrator, Janice Janiak, the OFA Member Service Representative, and Albert Witteveen as well. He's a director of the local federation. The Niagara Federation represents approximately 1,400 farm members in Niagara. And we're here tonight to request the Township of West Lincoln's participation in the Farm 911 Emily project to allow safety-conscious farmers in West Lincoln to have the ability to have 911 signs erected at farm field entrances to aid first responders in the event of a farm field emergency. At this point, we'd like to play a short video which explains the origin of this project due to a unfortunate accident that happened in Eastern Ontario a few years ago. So I don't know if Janice or Roberta, if you were going to put this up, and we'll listen to this, and then I've got a little bit more presentation. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
Listen to this, and I've got a little bit more presentation. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rob. So whenever you're ready, Roberta.
Janice, I don't think we have sound.
So we'll just give them a minute there to see if we can get some sound.
Let's try this again. We have sound?
We have sound, some sound.
Often, unfortunately, in the emergency services, it takes a tragedy for us to realize there's a gap.
On the day of the accident, I made the 911 call. When I got talking to the dispatcher, the first thing she asked me for is 911 number. I was unable to provide her with one, being there wasn't one in that field. She asked for the closest 911 number, which I'm not able to provide her with because it wasn't leaving Emily at the time. If there's one thing I learned from the accident is the importance of the 911 number on your property to be able to tell people where you are. The importance of it is life or death. You can't put a value on those crucial minutes that you need to be able to get help.
The challenge is that the GIS system is address-based in all the dispatch systems. So we really need an address. And that's usually the first question a dispatcher will ask you is what's your address? What's your emergency? What's your number? Those are the four critical questions you need to have answered. And the challenge with the access to the farm field challenges here, or the back watch, is that may not be the most accurate. And that's the only project identified was the next gap in 911. And if we can get that address information into the first responders' hands more quickly, they're going to get to the scene.
Luckily, the ambulance, we were able to see them going by, and I was able to get a hold of someone to send them back to us because we were, running out of time. And all it takes is one municipality, I believe, to see the importance of this project and the safety of it. It will be infectious. Other ones will follow. I think it's something the public is going to want and need. And it's important that we make it a mandatory service within these municipalities. Right now, I'm standing in front of the real splash pad. The community has really rallied and pulled together to make this project happen. The splash pad is the first part of Emily's legacy. The Farm 911 project is the next. When you make that call, they're not there. I don't want anyone else to have to feel the way I felt that day. Emily was 100% farm girl. We used to call her Farm Girl Strong because that's her attitude. That's what she was. Her outlook on life was just amazing. She was just an infectious person that if she was around you, you'd obviously bring you a lot of joy. She was the type of person that if you met her once, you remembered her. For her to have her name on a project like this, knowing that she's still helping people, is worth a lot.
So thank you for that. Rob, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I apologize for the quality of the video, but if anybody wants to view it, it is on YouTube. If you just type in YouTube video for Farm 911, that video is there. There's also one from Glengarry Township down in Eastern Ontario as well. They have taken on this program and they have some good comments. So anyway, as you can see, this is a result of the loss of life of a young girl, where the first responders were not able to access the property or find the property in time, and so this project has become a province-wide initiative over the past couple of years, assisted by local federations of agriculture in most areas. The project was started here locally in 2018 by the Niagara South Federation of Agriculture. The town of Pelham and the township of Wainfleet became involved with Niagara South, and the first signs were erected in the fall of 2019. In early 2020, Niagara North and South Federations amalgamated, and through that and COVID-19, it just kind of resulted in a brief pause in this project. So now we're actively moving forward with remaining municipalities in the Niagara region. At the same time, we're asking for interested farmers in the Pelham and Wainfleet townships, where this program is already in place, the application forms are there, that they consider applying for signs in their areas. This is also being aided by generous financial contribution from Clark Agri-Service and Wellandport to help offset the cost of the first signs in those municipalities. They're very conscious of the fact that this is something they feel is a great asset to the area, and as I say, they offered without being asked to give us a financial contribution, and we've had some other expressions of interest from other businesses as well to help out. So we're looking forward to be able to have farmers request these Farm 911 signs in all Niagara municipalities. And we feel this is a benefit to the community as a whole and not just strictly limited to farmers. We hope that the township would take this into consideration if they choose to adopt it when they're establishing a fee for the signs. I don't know how the prices were set in Pelham and Wainfleet. One of them is $100 per sign, the other one's $140. I don't know how those were arrived at. They seem reasonable. The other extreme is what we've heard from another municipality in southern Ontario that was approached, and they came back with a price tag of, I think it was between $350 and $400 a sign. We don't think that too many signs are going to get erected when a municipality asks for that kind of price on it. So we're hoping that some consideration would be made, and some thought put into it as kind of like a shared responsibility, I guess, to improve safety in the township. So at that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thanks for your time this evening, and we hope to have the opportunity for the Township of West Lincoln to be involved in the project. And if there's any questions, I'll certainly take them now.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. So I guess at this point, I guess I'll open it up to members of committee here. So I'll start with Mayor Bylsma.
So, I remember when Pelham joined, I was asked to make some comments. We hadn't explored that yet, but that was happening in Pelham, and I got a picture of Mayor Junkin in front of the first sign that they erected over there. I think it's great, it's vital. So at this point, we have an appointment. I have no further questions. I understand the basic basic premise, but just a question of is that all? It's all official. It's just a matter of the whole PERS system, and so maybe Dennis. I don't know if Dennis is on, but or Chief Fisher is on. Whether he can say obviously there's a small fee to erect the sign. Is that the length of our commitment, and then or is there an administrative or what happens in the behind the scenes?
So I don't see Dennis on, but maybe I'll go to the CAO. if Madam CEO, if you'd like to speak to this.
Yes, through you, Chair Riley, to Mayor Bilsma. The referral tonight, by the way, thank you very much, Rob, for the presentation. That was very, very helpful. We're going to be discussing this at the senior management team and to determine the best way. Yeah, there are a few things that we will be talking to our neighboring municipalities about. We have to do a bit of homework.
Okay.
And to figure out the right way and none of the details have been.
Yeah. Oh, and I figured as much. Yeah, I figured as much. I just wondered if there was a component that we're not necessarily seeing or understanding. And I'm assuming that if staff comes back to us with a report, that a more fulsome discussion. In principle, very much in support. Thank you.
Okay. I have Councillor Jonker.
Yeah, I think the mayor kind of asked the question that I was going to ask. So basically, from what I understand, and maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to Rob Cosby, the numbers that go into the system, they're registered, and the 911 responders and everybody, the fire department, ambulance, and police would all know where these numbers are. Basically, just like when I call in, they punch in my address number and it shows up, they know where to go. And is that all part of that? Like, is that can they put these numbers into that address system and it just works for them to get there? That's, I guess, kind of what I'm understanding, because yeah, it does make sense, because, you know, in Ward 2 here in we're an agriculture society area, there's definitely fields where there's a driveway in, but there's no address, right? So there's a need for this, and it's just, so I'm just asking, how does that work in the background? The responders would get those numbers, it automatically comes up in their system.
Yeah, so
is my understanding. Yeah,
so Rob, if you could explain I guess the concept behind the technology and how that works.
Well, I probably be corrected when whatever statement I make here, but we believe how it works is that the township, in the case of West Lincoln, is already set out in a grid anyways. So I don't know if it comes to the fire department or planning, would establish where the entrance to that field was on a given road, and they would assign it the number that it needs, just the same as you were building a house at that same entrance point. The only difference is that the signs that in other municipalities that have been put up for a field entrance are not green and white; they're black and yellow. That's a designation that there's no residence or building there. It's just a field marker, but it falls in line, in sequence with all the other numbers that would be on that road, and it would be recorded in the 911 system, so that you wouldn't have to rely on, say, somebody giving directions on a phone or triangulation from cell phone towers in the event that somebody had a weak signal. This way it gives you a definite address. Obviously, it's the onus is on the person that's in that field to know what the address is at the farm entrance. Otherwise, it's not going to help much, but at least it gives a location.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to go and see if there's any other members of council. Oh, not seeing any. Make sure I'm not missing anybody's hand. So I'll mention that we have before us also a recommendation. I didn't read that first. I wanted to get through the appointment first. So the recommendation is for us that correspondence dated December 23rd, 2020, submitted by the Niagara Federation of Agricultural Ag Safety Committee regarding Farm 911, the Emily project, be received. And that two, that the correspondence noted above be referred to staff for a report and recommendation at a future committee and council meeting. So at this point, I'm going to ask if there's any. So I have Councillor Jonker move it and Councillor Ganand second that. I'll open it up one more time. If anybody else has any other questions or comments, I believe this is the time to do it. Not seeing any. I'll call all those in favor.
Or.
And that passes unanimously.
Very good. Thanks for your time tonight, and we hope to be in touch on a later date.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rob, for your presentation.
Hey.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving forward, we are at the portion of the agenda where members of the gallery can request to address items that are on the agenda. 1 hour in total shall be allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall be permitted with 5 minutes to address their issue. Some exceptions may apply. A response may not be provided and the matter may be referred to staff. A person who wishes to discuss the planning application or a matter that can be appealed will be permitted to speak for 10 minutes. Chair can to inquire if there's any members of the public who wish to address any items of the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee agenda now. So are there any members in the gallery that would like to address anything that was on tonight's agenda? This is your time. So Jared, I see you, but I'm going to hold for a second just to wait to see if there's anything. Bert, are you seeing anything on your side? I don't see anything here on my side. On your side, I don't see anything here.
I'm not seeing any others, Chair.
Okay, so at this point, I will go to Jared. He did have his hand up. So Jared, you're welcome to address the items on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping to address, I believe it is item, looks like P06-21. That's respecting change to conditions for the crossings on the 20 development.
Okay.
So this is some on council and committee are going to be familiar with the crossings on the 20 development. It's been ongoing for, unfortunately, I think over a decade. The project itself is built out and there are some occupancies on, or it's not built out, sorry, it's under construction and there are a few occupancies currently and more coming up. And recently, as we were discussing development on the north side or on the north portion of this project, some issues came to light that appeared to have slipped through the cracks between both on our side and on the township side, and we need to find solutions to them. So those issues are regarding some remediation on the south side that isn't captured in a record of site condition, and we recognize the issue at hand, and we're working with Mr. Treble and Mr. Boroma to find an adequate solution. I believe the change in conditions is of a desire to ensure that township staff have the ability to implement any proposed solution. And initially, we were opposed to changes in conditions on the fact that it might impact my client's overall closing schedule, but I'm told by his residential lawyer that there are no firm closings and there are no necessary concerns about the timing for closings. And I just wanted to give some of that background to this committee when they hear the report that we're working on it. We've retained the lawyer to do the environmental consultant to do the additional reporting. But based on the initial reporting that was done for the project, we're not expecting to experience any contamination. We just have to find a solution with Brian and or with Mr. Treble and Mr. Boroma that satisfies everybody. And I suppose ultimately there will be further reporting to you. But that's all. I just wanted to provide some of that background to it, where we don't like to see additional conditions on a project, but we understand where Mr. Treble's coming from. We understand what our solution needs to be. We just have to take We just have to take the steps to get there. So that's those are my comments to that report.
Excellent. Thank you, Jared. So I'll extend this one more time to the gallery for the few that are left. If you have any comments, this is the time, or you'd like to address any items on the agenda, sorry, this is the time to do so. And I'm not seeing any. So that being said, we're going to move forward to consent item agendas, or consent agenda items, sorry. That being said, we're going to move forward to consent item agendas. All right, perfect. So all items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, and in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following the adoption of the remainder consent agenda items. So moving forward, recommendation that the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee hereby approves the following consent items. Items 1 and 2B and are hereby received for information. And item 3B and is hereby received, and the recommendations contained thereof be adopted with the exceptions of the following items, which currently there are none. 1, technical report PD-06-2021, draft renewable energy policies for the Township of West Lincoln, official plan file number 1701-00519. 2, technical report PD 001-2021, Mars Homes, Smithville West Incorporated, Thrive draft plan of subdivision rezoning file number 2000-90-20. And 3, recommendation report PD 02-2021, naming of Regional Road 9 as York Road, 911 PERS naming process. So I'm going to need a mover. Councilor Gannon, and seconder will be Councilor Trombetta. So at this point, is there any items that anybody would like to remove? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask all those in favor.
Support.
All right, that passes unanimously. Moving forward, we have nothing under communications this week. We're going to go to staff reports. Item P0321, Planner 2, Madison Etzel, and Director of Planning, Brian Treble. Recommendation report PD-04-2021, Casterville United Church at 9550 York Road, zoning bylaw amendment, file number 1601-009-20. Recommendation that report PD-04-2021 regarding the Casterville United Church, 9550 York Road, zoning bylaw amendment, file number 1601-009-20 dated January 11th, 2021 be approved, and that section 3417 of the Planning Act apply, and that no further public meeting is required. And 3, that an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for 1601-009-20 submitted by the trustees of the Sinclairville Community United Church. Okay, and corresponding zoning bylaw be approved and passed. And 4, that staff be authorized to circulate the notice of the decision for the zoning bylaw amendment with the corresponding 20-day appeal period. So at this point, I call for a mover. So I have Mayor Bylsma, seconder Councilor Jonker, and any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Support.
That passes unanimously. We'll go to item 2. So item P04-21, Planner 2, Madison Etzel, I think there's a typo there. Planning and Building, Brian Treble, recommendation report number PD-07-2021, Niagara Palette zoning bylaw amendment, file number 1601-008-20. And the recommendation is that report PD-07-2021 regarding Niagara Palette's zoning bylaw amendment, file number 1601-008-20 dated January 11, 2021 be approved, and that 2, section 3417 of the Planning Act apply, and that no further public meeting is required, and 3, that an application for the zoning bylaw for 1601-008-20 submitted by Niagara Palettes and corresponding zoning bylaw be approved and passed. And 4, that staff be authorized to circulate the notice of the decision for the zoning bylaw amendment with the corresponding 20-day appeal period. So I'm going to see if I can get a mover. I have Councilor Jonker and I have Mayor Bylsma. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor?
Support.
And that passes unanimously. So we're going to go to the next item. P05-21, Planner 2, Garrett Borma, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. Recommendation report PD-03-2021, local road policies for unopened or unmaintained roads, file number 1701. 001-20, and the recommendation is that report PD-03-2021 regarding the local roads policies for unopened and unmaintained roads, file number 1701-001-20 dated January 11, 2021 be received, and 2, that section 3417 of the Planning Act apply, and that no further public meeting is required. And 3, that the application for the official plan amendment number 58, file number 1701 -001-20 and corresponding bylaw be passed, be approved. And 4, that the staff be authorized to circulate the notice of the decision for the official plan amendment with corresponding 20-day appeal period. So I'm going to call for a mover. See if we get someone else. Councillor Gannan, second by Councillor Trombetta. And at this point, is there any questions or comments? I have Councillor Trombetta and then Councillor Gannan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy New Year, everybody. Sorry, I've been a little bit quiet, just processing this obviously first planning meeting and getting back into the groove of things. In reading this report, I have issues with some of the stuff that is put together in the report, and I need some answers to it. Unless I don't get the right answers, I won't be in support of the report. So in this report, for us to implement, there's a section in here which kind of states that if you actually go to this report in 319, if you councilors want to look at it, where I'm coming from to discuss, on this report is in the 5th category, it says council approves and denies the application. If the unrolled road allowance needs to be open and meets the criteria, the staff is the experts. I don't know why it's got to be political and council has to approve or deny this section. I'm feeling that this section needs to be taken out unless it doesn't meet criteria and an individual wants to bring it to council because they don't like staff's recommendation. Then I believe it should come to council. But council, and maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Treble or Garrett, why is council need to approve this application? I just think it's just going to get very political, and I'd like to see that out.
Okay, Mr. Treble, would you be able to handle that?
I can certainly start through you, Mr. Chair. The struggle that staff have had, and Garrett and I have gone back and forth and consulted with a number of others as well. The best way to open the road, it seems, is to do a joint planning and environmental assessment process, what's referred to as an integrated environmental assessment. And to do that, you need a planning application on the table. That's the trick. And an official plan amendment does qualify for that joint assessment process. Otherwise, we're doing a planning approval and then they have to go through a full environmental assessment separately. So we're trying to dovetail the two applications together, but there has to be a planning application, and the approval authority for a planning application has to be council. It can't be staff. That's the catch as to why it requires council approval.
Thank you. That answer your question, Councillor?
Sort of. So how does this work again, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Treble? Just like any planning, a meeting has to happen, then they describe it just like any public sort of meeting. Does it go to the public as well with this, or how does it work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, there will have to be a public process, but an engineer would be hired. The engineer would put together the documentation with respect to the environmental assessment piece of the process, looking at the environmental impacts and all of the sort of road design planning kind of pieces. And then that would be what gets considered at the public process, as well as the land use policy piece. So it would be sort of a full picture that's discussed through the public process.
So it's not just someone who lives on maybe I'm just looking at it from a rural standpoint of an unopened road allowance, that someone bought a piece of property trying to build the road so they can build a house in. It's more of a different complex process is what you're kind of getting at, Brian.
Yeah.
Like I'm quite sure they'd have to engineer the road to obviously meet the standards through our engineering department, which I understand. But other than that, I guess the application, because an environmental study has to be done for them to all do that, and that's what you need council approval for?
Yes. An example of one, and I don't know if this maybe predates pretty much everybody on council, but Industrial Park Road was extended from Spring Creek Road through to Young Street, and that went through this kind of a process. There were planning applications and public meetings and environmental assessments. There was actually an appeal, and the appeal went on to a higher level for consideration. So it's not for this. It's not going to work for a short little extension. It's got to be a more fulsome application that benefits the township. We're not really looking for those ones that extended by maybe 50 feet. It's got to benefit the township because it's a through road or whatever, so that we're not adding more road and more turnaround and more cost. It has to do the township some benefits. So something like the extension of Industrial Park Road would be a good example that would fall into this category.
So it's not someone, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Treble. So it's not really, does this also apply to someone that's bought a property adjacent to an unopened road allowance? And I'll just use one. Let's say someone decides to buy near Hodgkins or Burns Road, their unopened road allowance. This does not apply if they need to access, to build a road for themselves out of their own pocket to build a house. Does that also apply to this application or not, Brian?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, it would apply, but it's an extensive enough process and it has to benefit the township. So we're not going to build 100 feet of dead end road. That doesn't benefit the township. So if they're going to build it, they're going to have to build it in such a way that Public Works is satisfied that it's something that's worthy of maintenance. So probably a through road or something like that is what we're talking about, through you, Mr. Chair.
And
So that's the reason it's as complicated as it is.
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you, Mr. Treble. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Gannon, I believe you were second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, further to what Councillor Trombetta was saying, the old policy left a lot of wiggle room for somebody to be able to buy a landlocked piece of land at a cheaper rate and then suddenly come and want to have a piece of road put through. So I think this policy, Councillor Trombetta, tightens that up a little more. At least that's my understanding of the intent of that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Treble, was that under the region's comments, they talk about whether it should be or could be put into a public works policy. And I'm wondering if that's something that you feel that we should pursue, since it is sort of a planning public works issue. Should there be some kind of joint policy, or is there already some kind of joint policy that allows this to fall under that umbrella?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Planning and Public Works have worked reasonably closely on the policy set that we have put together.
Okay.
The piece that they need to add now is an update of the municipal engineering standards, and that's actually on their radar to do this year. They'll need to have consideration for the different levels of road construction that are appropriate depending on the nature of the road that we're dealing with. Just as an example, this is one that I can speak to. Garrett, I'm sure, can speak to others, but Shaw Road was one of the ones that was being pushed for opening. And the municipal engineering standards were going to require a wider road than the existing Shaw Road that accesses the first house that's already on that road. And it didn't really make sense that you'd have I forget the width now, but I'm going to say a 5 meter, whatever. We were going to have a width of road, and then suddenly you get past the driveway and it would widen and be wider the rest of the way. That just didn't make sense, but we don't have the right municipal engineering stuff to deal with that. So that part is yet to come.
Okay, so that's really good. I get that. So does that mean, though, if somebody was looking to do this, will that eventually, when Public Works have their piece in place, their engineering piece, will that be part of an entire package or something that somebody who's interested in such a thing would get all in one? They wouldn't have to go looking through Public Works, would they?
No, it would be available to the public, and all of the engineers would have the municipal engineering standards pretty much at their fingertips.
So what I'm looking to prevent, you probably know where I'm going with this, is somebody who says, oh, I didn't know, and I didn't know how to find that information, or I couldn't find all of that information. And then we're back to a position where somebody's already done something that they're not supposed to do. And then we're back trying to deal with that issue. So I just want to make sure by the time this process is finished, everything is, clear and concise and easy to find for that person who might be contemplating such a thing.
Mr. Chair, just to sort of follow up on that, that's the one advantage as well of the planning process in this case, that we have the pre-consultation piece. So a complete package is provided at the start of the process through Garrett and his leadership on the pre-consultation, that they should walk away knowing what the standards would be for that plan.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other councilors like to speak to this? I'm going to Councilor Trombetta, just 1 second. Not seeing any. Okay, Councilor Trombetta, floor is yours.
Oh,
thank you.
sorry.
Sorry,
get
just
the
sorry,
mic.
just to follow up one more question that I had. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, through Mr. Treble. When we say we're going to unopen it now, it has to meet the criteria. One more thing I didn't add to, and I apologize for not adding to my first time. When it has to meet the standards for a proper road, does it mean that it's a tarred and chip road, Mr. Treble? Like we have gravel roads in our community, and that could also meet the criteria of somebody trying to put an unopened road allowance and make it into a gravel road. And that's something I want to eliminate. I don't want to add another gravel road to this community. Obviously, especially now with this lovely, nice mild January, I've been getting inundated with pothole calls. So I'm trying to eliminate, if that does happen, is there something in this that can prevent that from being a gravel road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be the municipal engineering standards. So once again, they're key to making sure that we not only speak to width, but also to finished top surface or coat or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, and the only reason is because, all right, I just a little bit uneasy because I know a gravel road can meet municipal standards. I mean, I need the director maybe to confirm that, but Public Works, maybe you can confirm that. Does a gravel road meet municipal standards?
So I don't see the director of public works.
No, I know he's not here.
Oh, okay.
I said like, maybe I know I need the director of public works here, but he's not here. But if I could get further follow-up, does a gravel road meet municipal standards? And that's one question that maybe you can answer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can partly answer it. I think without a proper engineering standard to speak to what our expectations are, a gravel road is probably acceptable, but that'll be part of the engineering standard that has yet to be written. So, you know, in theory, yeah, gravel roads are acceptable across Ontario, but are they going to be acceptable in our engineering standard? I don't think we know that answer yet, because that tweaking is not done. So.
Okay, so that's one thing I'd like to see, that it doesn't get as a gravel road, and we can have at least minimum of tar and chip road for these unopened road allowances. So anyways, okay, thank you. Thank you for, sorry for that second question there, Mr. Chair.
That's fine. Councilor Rayner, I know you had a question.
Yeah, Councilor Trebetta was asking about gravel roads, but I think a lot of ours in our area are mud roads. So I don't know if they would be acceptable. But anyways, and I've received a lot of complaints also. That's one of the things I wanted to say. But that'll be it for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Jonker.
Yeah, I don't think we have any open roads that are mud roads. We have gravel roads that are being maintained as best our public works can do. And yes, they get rough, but to say we have mud roads, those roads that are mud roads are the closed roads we are talking about. And I myself don't have a problem with saying, okay, somebody wants to extend Shaw Road another 100 feet and we can make it a gravel road. I don't think we need to make Shaw Road a chip and tar road when he just wants to have access to his property that's at the end of it. So I wouldn't be in favor of saying we need to have, it's got to be tar and chipped. That's going to cost a lot of money for somebody that's just trying to get a road to their property. And if he meets all the other criteria, I don't think we should be burdening that on somebody. And also, yeah, I just that you to say we have mud roads is not true.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Going to look around. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you got it. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Rayner.
Yeah, Mr. Treble, if you've got an unopened road allowance between two properties and they're on a farmer's field, or they're both on farm field land, then I thought the process would be, and I've done this in the past, that you go to the neighbor, and if the neighbor doesn't want half of that unopened allowance, then you can get the whole thing. But it's supposed to be 50-50 with your neighbor. And I'm not talking about putting a road in, I'm talking about putting it back into crops. Then that's the only process you have to do is the township, you apply to the township notifies the abutting owner They're asked if they're at all interested in it. If they are, then they can buy whatever it costs to do it, the survey or whatever else is required. And they get half of the unopened road allowance, and you get the other half. And if they don't want it, then you can get the whole thing. Whoever makes the application, that's the direction it goes in. Is that not correct when it comes to something as simple as that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Rayner, that's for road closings. So it's kind of the opposite process of what we're talking here tonight.
Right.
Councillor Trombetta had raised previously as well that on road closings, we should have some sort of a policy because we'd like to get some roads closed and offer books, as presumably a lot of them are probably liabilities. So that's a policy set that we're going to write, and certainly right now when an offer or when an inquiry is made about closing a road, you're right, we offer half to each side and then go through a proper road closing process. Different than what we're talking about with this report.
All right, if I could raise a further question to that. Mr. Treble, what will be the status of Caister Center Road between South Chip and the Haldeman Norfolk Township line? It's currently blocked off. It's used as a 4x4, making a heck of a mess of it. What is the plan on that? Is there one at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Public Works should probably get involved in some of these discussions, I would think, to to be given a more fulsome answer. My understanding is that that would be a mud road, that if you were to talk about applying this policy, you'd have to make sure it's done in such a way that it benefits the township for the maintenance of that road. So presumably opening it from one end to the other would be something to consider, as opposed to a dead end or something with a turnaround.
So at this point, it's considered a Councillor Jonker's mud road.
Well, I think at this point, Councillor, you kind of got your answer there, and I think we should keep moving. I think that's a lot of topic. So any other question, Councillor Rayner?
No, I guess you move on.
Okay, perfect. With that being said, does anyone else need me to read the resolution again, or are we I've seen some nodding heads. We're good. So I already have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? All right, that passes. Oh, that passes unanimously. All right, so moving along, 9.4, here we go. Item P 06-21, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, recommendation report PD-09-2021, change to conditions of the draft plan of condominium approval for crossings on the 20 North and South community. Recommendation B, that report PD-09-21 regarding recommendation report change to conditions of the draft plan of condominium approval for crossing on the 20 North and South community. That was mouthful. Dated January 11, 2021 be received, and that the list of the draft plan of condominium conditions attached to be amended to include a new condition known as number 3B for both North and South community as follows. I guess 1, that prior to final condominium approval, the additional lands of the owner as regulated by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority be the subject of a report to council that outlines the proposed use and ownership plans, and that such report is approved by the Township of West Lincoln Council prior to final clearance of the condition. And 2, that this change of conditions is in accordance with Section 5144 of the Planning Act, which includes provision for an appeal period, as the change of conditions shall not be considered as a minor. So if I can get a mover and a seconder. I got Councillor Trombetta and Mayor Bylsma. With all that being said, I'm going to open it up now to comments or questions. Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, that passes. Moving on to 9.5, item P 07-21, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. Recommendation report PD-10-2021, red line revision of Niagara Christian Gleaners site plan file number 2100-011-17. Recommendation B, That report PD-10-2021 regarding recommendation report red line revision of Niagara Christian Gleaners site plan, file number 2100-011-17 dated January 11th, 2021 be received, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign an amending a site plan agreement once the site plan has been amended to the satisfaction of the township staff. So if I can get a mover and a seconder, I got Councilor Ganan and Councilor Jonker. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor?
Or
That passes unanimously. All right, so we are on 9.6. And so Director of Planning, PD-08-21, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, recommendation report PD-05-2021, correction of fire route by crossing on the 20 South community. Recommendation that report PD-05-2021 regarding recommendation report correction of fire route bylaw crossing on the 20 South community dated January 11th, 2021 be received, and that 2, a bylaw be passed to repeal says a Schedule B drawing 20 of bylaw 97-2030 and replace with a new Schedule B drawing 20 as attached to this report. If I can get a mover and a seconder, I have Councilor Jonker and Councilor Broderick. Any questions or comments? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Or
Okay, that passes unanimously. Now we're moving along. All right, so 9.7. Make sure I didn't skip that. Yeah, 9.7, item P09-21, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, recommendation report PD-11-2021, exemption of units 5 to 13 from the double administration fees of building bylaw 2019-83- blank there for crossing on the 20 South community. Recommendation B, that report PD-011-21 regarding recommendation report exemption of units 5 to 13 from double administration fees of building bylaw 2019-83- blank for crossing on the 20 South community dated January 11th, 2021 be received, and that committee and council concur with the recommendation of staff that the double permit fee and administration fee provision by law 2019-83 not apply to units 5 to 13, but the double permit fee shall apply to the additional units commenced before permit issuance before units 14 to 18. So if I can get a mover and a seconder. Councilor Ganan and Councilor Trombetta. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Or
that passes unanimously. All right, so at this point, we're going to be moving to item 10, other business. Start with the members of committee. Anybody have, I guess, matters of business matters or informative nature they'd like to speak about? I have Councilor Trombetta. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to say, I guess this is the point. Good job, well done for your first meeting as chair for this evening. Did a good job tonight. No, not too many speed bumps. So, but I'm quite sure as we move forward, there'll be a few. So thank you very much.
Closed, eh?
Well, you still got to do close. You're right, but I feel I'd do it in open session, and then at the end, we won't have time afterwards to mention anything. So, but thanks for tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I would mention, I kind of got a little bit of a test drive before. I don't know if you recall, but last year I was able to cover a meeting or two. So this is my first time virtual. It's obviously a little bit different experience, but I appreciate the kind words. Any other members of committee would like to talk about anything? Councilor Yonker, you're first, and Councilor Ganan, you'll be second.
Yeah, and I'll probably take some of what she wants to report, but that's okay. Just thought I'd let you know that we had a half-hour meeting before this meeting with the West Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, and they are hard at work. Definitely going to be some changes in the future. The chairman will be done, so they are looking for a new chair, and I think there's some possibilities there that they're looking at. So not a panic, but definitely if you think of anybody that would be an asset to the Chamber of Commerce, talk to them and let them know that the Chamber of Commerce is looking for a few board members. And the AGM meeting will be on February 18th, virtually, obviously. And they're working on getting that all organized and ready. And that's when they'll swear in the new board members as well. And then also just an update on the Toonie Drive there for the West Lincoln Chambers Drive was well done. We are thankful that we could report that they raised $5,241.41 for West Lincoln Community Care to spend on Christmas gifts for those in need this season. So well done to the community. Hats off to everybody who put their loonies, 20s, 50s, 5s into the bottles. And also thanks to the chamber for organizing that and carrying that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ganam.
So I was going to let you wear that hat, Councillor Jonker, and just add to it that Community Care sent their thank you to the chamber as well, but also sent in a report by which members of council might want to know that there were 120 families helped and over 300 individuals helped during this Christmas season. So the generosity of our community was overwhelming, and certainly lots of roads led to various ways to help West Lincoln Community Care, and those in turn helped a lot of people in our municipality. So that's good. I wanted to say too that the Legion is closed, as many of you know, but they're still trying to do a lot of their programming. And so I had the privilege a week and a half ago to actually judge the poetry writing and the prose written about what young people in junior grades, so grades 4, 5 in there, sort of that area mostly, and a few grade 6s, and then grade 7 and 8, and then some high school students wrote their own stories about what they had learned about Remembrance Day and so on. So they do that after Remembrance Day to allow for the work to be done in the schools and for kids to have time to research. And then there's a contest. And so our division, I was able to judge that, and they've now gone on to a higher level. So we'll see what happens with our West Lincoln kids. But I was really impressed with the quality of the writing that I saw, both poetry and prose. So it was really good. And I just wanted to tell you that our brand new Councillor Broderick, and I are taking part Wednesday in another Zoom meeting with the Girl Guides to talk about a little bit like what Councillor Riley, you and Mayor Bylsma did with the school situation, looking at sort of civics thing. But this is really the emphasis on young ladies and having them get involved in things in the community and learn a little bit about why we chose to get involved and what our workload is and the kinds of things that we can continue to do in the community. So we have that coming up this week, and I thought that was worthy. I didn't know whether Shelley would know that this is an opportunity to do that or not. So we're doing it together.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Mayor Bylsma.
Yeah, so just 2 things. Just wanted to make council aware of a little meet and greet that Madam CAO, myself had with the new Director of Economic Development at the region, George Spezza. He's new to the position, and we had a kind of just casual meeting earlier this week, or sorry, late last week. I believe it was Wednesday, actually, so middle of the week. Just making introductions, highlighting some of the work that we had done in our workshops, some of the assessments that we had made about our own community, the way some of the assets that we have. And so I just wanted to make council aware that we will be conducting more interactions with the regional economic development as our community grows. So I just wanted to make mention of that, George Spezza. The second thing that I wanted to address just briefly is West Lincoln is not in the good books right now with respect to COVID cases. Per capita, we are the highest. Now, I want to temper that a little bit by saying we are a small community, so a few cases does tend to skew the numbers quite substantially fairly quickly. The region as a whole kind of caught up to us because there was a lot of a backlog in some of the other communities. So today, I don't know if it's good news or bad news, but the caseload in Niagara region jumped up by 400 or something like that as they caught up with some of the backlog. And I'm just pleased to say that we kind of stayed the course. So all that to say is caseloads are very volatile right now. We're still appealing. We put on a media release on Friday, basically saying to the residents, and I just want to reiterate for you guys as well, if people are asking you, the protocols are remaining in place, and vaccines are becoming closer to a reality. There's some developments. The region has developed a plan, working in concert with Niagara Health. And so there's a lot of ongoing discussions. This meeting happens to be my fourth today, but I've had meetings with mayors and public health and today and last week, and there'll be another one on Thursday as we try to navigate these kind of crucial days with the small amount of vaccines that are going to be coming our way to take that edge off, mostly protecting our long-term care. So there's a lot that could be said. I really didn't want to turn that into a big thing, but just to acknowledge that if citizens and residents ask you questions about, the plan and what's happening, I just kind of want to reiterate to you guys, to you folks, that the region's working well with Niagara Health to when we get our day that we and it's soon. That's all I can say at this point. I know that it's going to be soon. We'll be Niagara Public Health and Niagara Health are ready. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Any other members of committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. The only thing I'm confused about is our illustrious premier said just before Christmas, and he said, and I quote, a one-time lockdown, and it'll be over on January the 23rd. But the way things are going, I got a feeling he's going to turn into a Donald Trump. But I don't know. But he did say one, and I thought when he said it, I thought, boy, you're sticking your neck out. But he did say clearly one-time lockdown till January 23rd. I got a feeling he's not going to be a man of his word. I could be wrong, but this is not going in the right direction for a comment to be made very premature, knowing that the second wave is worse than the first. And I don't know, his medical advisors, everybody's questioning the validity of how good they've done their job, because obviously we're a mess right now, and they've had all summer and all fall to get their act in order, and we've gone crazy lately. I can't believe Niagara's numbers the last couple of days have just gone nuts. It seems like we're not in control. And that part really bothers me. And I have a feeling that this lockdown is not going to end on January 23rd. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor. All right. So I guess that said, I'll mention that so at the end of December, I'll come back to you in a second, Jason. At the end of December, the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee had wrapped up their lighting and decor contest, and that was received exceptionally well. I don't know if I mentioned before, but I believe we had approximately 108 participants throughout the municipality, and so they had done like a Facebook Live broadcast of the winners, and so I can't give enough credit to them. They really pulled together to make this happen. I think it was received exceptionally well. I'm still kind of beside myself with how incredible the sponsors were. Like, we certainly weren't planning originally really asking businesses or anything like that in the beginning, or weren't expecting much from businesses that would like to participate, and they kind of overwhelmed us with donations and gifts and ways to give back to the community, especially those who everybody's been impacted this year with the pandemic. So it was such an uplifting way to kind of end the year and give us some hope and inspiration for 2021. So anyways, the committee did an exceptional job, and without skipping beat, we're already talking about what it's going to look like next year, hopefully going back into the parade form, or this year, sorry, I should say. And so hopefully I'll be able to report back in the not too distant future on some of those updates. But right now they've already been taking a few days to recoup, and I'll be right back at it. So kudos to every member of the parade committee and the community as well for their involvement. And yeah, hopefully we can get back to some kind of normal this year too. Councillor Trombetta, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this is maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Mayor, maybe Madam CAO. I know there's a big announcement coming tomorrow. I guess since we're talking the COVID, Ford is making an announcement, and obviously some stuff has been flying out already about, there's a couple little blurbs here that shorter hours for essential businesses, which involve earlier closures, later openings, limits on construction activity. Again, that's would be a limit to those that are essential. Only non-essential construction won't be happening, and obviously a requirement that no employees will be allowed in the offices unless they're deemed essential. These are just some of the things that they're throwing out there. Obviously, that's going to backlog our I guess our own personal construction wave that we'd like to put out through our schedule and all our things that we're going to do. Will there be a report coming back maybe to see how we're not a report, but obviously how we're going to deal with what coming up in the budget and how we're going to move forward in the, I guess, in the our timelines that we had for maybe things coming up for our budget this year. Obviously, this is going to delay a lot of things if this does come down the pipe. So will we have maybe a sort of a game plan coming back to us in the future once this announcement's tomorrow? Madam CAO or Mr. Mayor, one or the other?
I'll go to Madam CAO first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Riley, to Councillor Trombetta. I think you actually know a little bit more about what might be coming out in the announcement tomorrow than I do. We're all sort of waiting with bated breath to figure out how we will respond. So in terms of a game plan, I don't have one at this point in time, but we all regroup right after the announcements come out and try to figure out the best process. Of course, next week at Finance and Admin, there'll be a report coming on the 2020 budget and sort of a summary of the impacts of the different actions that have taken place in the last year. So I think technically, I think it's a good thing to raise. We don't know yet. I really don't know what to expect. And
just stating that, you know, shorter hours for essential businesses, that does obviously fall into to us, right? Which is a scary thing because it's going to delay a lot of things, which I'm not a big proponent of doing. I think we're working fine and trying to stay safe the way we're doing. But again, that's over my head, right? So, which are going to affect our budgets and all that kind of stuff, right? So
if we could predict, we'd be really, really, really happy. So right now we're still, we still, you know, we have regular and ongoing conversations, and we will figure out the right way to respond and make sure that council is updated.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councilor Jonker, were you putting your hand up or were you just adjusting? Okay. All right, so moving forward, under new business, only items that require immediate attention and direction and must first approve a motion to introduce a new item of business. So I'm not seeing anybody's hands up for that. So we're going to move forward to confidential matters. Recommendation that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, 12.1 Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and Andrea Mennel, and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, legal enforcement matter, natural severance, Caster Center, application closed session exemptions, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administration tribunals, affecting the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, is 12.1. And in 12.2, we have around the Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, legal solicitor, client privilege, confidential recommendation, building demolition, and environmental update on John Street, Casterville. Applicable closed session exemptions are litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administration tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And 12.3, being confidential, Township Solicitor Sarah Premi, legal solicitor client privilege, Sandra Gibson LPAT, applicable a closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And so the recommendation is that this committee meeting now, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I guess at that point I need a mover. So I have Mayor Billsma and secondary Councilor Ganand. So all those in favor in going into closed session?
Mr. Chair, just before going into close, I do need to declare a conflict on the item 12.3. So I don't know if I will, and the reason for that conflict is that I live in vicinity of the area. I declared conflict way back before. So heading into close, just leaving it open that I will be declaring conflict on that. So I don't know if I need to remove myself from that or do I sit in that? That's a question to you guys.
So I am gonna suggest that maybe we do this in two, because I don't know if you can vote on this as a whole, knowing that that's there. So we'll do item, because you can be a part of the first two. I believe that's going to be our last item. And so I guess we're going to move into close. I'll go to the clerk. Do we need to do this separately, or does it matter if Councilor Trombetta votes to go into close, and then when we get to that closed portion he's removed?
That's right. Okay. So you don't have to separate it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank
When Councilor Trombetta gets into closed session, he'll remove himself for the last portion.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Councilor, I hope that answers that. Thank you for the disclosure of the conflict there. That's noted. So at this point, all those in favor in going into closed session?
Support.
So that passes. So I guess that puts us in close. So the recommendation is that this committee does now resume an open session at the hour of 10:39 p.m. So I guess I need a mover and a seconder. So Councilor Ganand moves it. Councilor Jonker seconds it. All in favor?
Support.
Okay, so they're back into open. So before us, we have item P11-21, Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and Andrea Manel, and Director and Planning and Building Brian Treble. Legal bylaw enforcement matter, natural severance, Caister Center. Recommendation that the township solicitors be and are hereby authorized to proceed as directed in closed session with respect to the legal bylaw enforcement matter, natural severance, Caister Center. So having a mover and seconder already. So all those in favor? Okay. Oh, sorry, what's going on? Sorry, Cheryl shaking her head there. Did I flub up?
You did not get a mover and a seconder. I think that's what.
Oh, I said, for the open session I did. My apologies.
You brought us back to open, but now we need it for each of those resolutions.
Rookies. Okay, my bad. All right, so I have Councilor Ganand had her hand up. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Trombetta. Assuming there's no more, I guess we can't really talk about it. So all those in favor?
Support.
Okay, that passes.
Opposed.
Those opposed, we have one opposed. On item P12-21, Director of Planning, Building, Brian Treble, Legal Solicitor, Client Privilege, Building Demolition Environment Update, 702 John Street, Caister. Recommendation that the township staff are hereby authorized to proceed as directed in closed session with respect to legal solicitor client privilege matter, confidential recommendation, building department environment update, John Street, Caisterville. Is that the same thing I just read?
No.
Okay, so no, the other one was separate. Sorry, my bad. All right, it's getting late. So if I can get a mover. Mayor Billsma, seconder, Councilor Braderick, and all those in favor?
Support.
And that passes unanimously. And then last but not least, item P13-21, Township Solicitor Sarah Premi, Legal Solicitor Client Privilege, Sandra Gibson LPAT Appeal. The recommendation before us is that the Township Solicitor be and is hereby authorized to proceed in order to resolve the Sandra Gibson LPAT Appeal. If I can get a mover. Councilor Ganand, secondary, Councilor Jonker. And all those in favor?
Support.
I will note that Councilor Trombetta is not voting. Sorry, I called the question, so that is passed unanimously. But Councilor Trombetta did not vote as he disclosed a conflict of interest. And at this moment, it brings us to the adjournment, which I will call at 10:42 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your time.